First of all, thanks everyone for coming. Is everyone enjoying learning stuff? Meeting people? Making friends? Okay, good. My name is Mekka, and I'm the engineering director for growth for Google Play. And I'm going to be talking a little bit today about building inclusive engineering teams. Just show of hands, who here has seen this content before? Okay, just a smattering of people. So this is a talk that I give at Google. I've also given it at Netflix, in the house, at Amazon, at lots of different companies. And being able to build inclusive engineering teams is a competitive advantage. So if it's a competitive advantage, why am I giving it away for free, right? As an industry, there are certain things that we should compete on, right? Google wants to make a streaming video service. Netflix wants to make a streaming video service. The industry is best served when these companies compete. And there are certain things we should collaborate on, right? Security disclosures, internet standards, right? The industry is best served when we work together. It's a similar thing with people, right? Google wants to hire me, right? Netflix wants to hire me, right? The industry and me is best served when we compete. Y'all have a little tug of war with me, right? But for certain things, like with people, the industry is best served when we work together, right? So I think that sharing things that we've learned about building inclusive engineering teams is one of those things where we're best served when we work together. Now, it might be a competitive advantage, but I don't want to benefit from the at-scale suffering of women and underrepresented minorities in other companies. So that's why we share, right? Now, something else I want to just kind of set some ground rules. I am not an expert. No one is an expert. There is no team anywhere in tech that is fully inclusive on all of the dimensions that are important. But some of us have discovered some things that work. And I'm here to talk about some of those things. So before we get into that, I want to share just some numbers on my team. My team, all engineers at Google, 10% Black, half of my tech leads are women, 40% of my managers are women, 40% of my engineers are women. So on some dimensions, that's more than 10 times industry average, right? There's also dimensions that you can't see, right? Gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, right? These are also really important. And before we can even talk about how to go about doing this, we have to understand what the real goal is. So I just rattled off some numbers about the demographics of my team. Those numbers are not really important. The goal is not this many Black or that many women. The goal is simply this. We want to make our team a place that hardworking, talented, collaborative people from any background have the opportunity to succeed and thrive. That's it. That's the goal, right? Hardworking, talented, collaborative people from any background can succeed and thrive. The reason that's important is because it scales. It scales geographically. It scales temporally. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're a white male software engineer from Poland and you write code in London, are you discriminated against? Well, pre-Brexit, I would have said probably not. Post-Brexit, you're in London, you're from Eastern Europe writing code, maybe. It's something we have to look at, right? That's not going to show up on anyone's inclusion or diversity scorecard, right? So, but the statement that I said, we want hardworking, talented, collaborative people from any background to be able to succeed and thrive. Okay, by show of hands, who here has been to Cupertino? Okay, Cupertino is Apple headquarters. Now, that city is 1/3 East Asian, 1/3 South Asian. Apple itself is about 1/3 East Asian, about 1/3 South Asian. Now I want you to all do something real quick. Just grab your phones. I know you're on there anyway, right? I want you to pull up in your favorite browser of choice, Chrome. No, just kidding. Spark. Pull up apple.com/leadership. I'm going to take a look at that page, okay? Apple.com/leadership. And I want you to scroll down until you see an Asian person, okay? Keep going. Keep going. Oh, there she is. Retail sales China. Okay, now who here has taken a math class or two? Okay, convince yourself that that is a possibility, right? The glass ceiling is real. If you look just at race or you look just at gender, you miss these types of things. You miss accessibility, right? You miss the fact that certain biases express differently in different locales. In the United States, we don't have a lot of chief technology officers or chief science officers who are women, but we have CEOs that are women. In Eastern Europe, we have a lot of chief research officers and chief science officers that are women. Almost zero women CEOs, right? This is a gender bias, but it expresses differently in different locales, right? So this is something that we have to be aware of. Now, something else, a couple of terms I want us to all kind of familiarize ourselves with, because this is going to help us understand the really simple and easy things that we can do to make our teams more inclusive, okay? I want to talk, actually, sorry, before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about positive intent, right? Now that's something that can be a very annoying word, because it's like, he knows what he's doing. He's doing this intentionally. Why do you keep telling me to assume positive intent? And I think positive intent is understood, or is a very misunderstood term. In any company of any size, there's going to be some percentage of people who are just terrible people, just awful, right? And I hope that all of our companies have the ability to identify and excrete these people. And I use that word intentionally, excrete. So the bad news, though, and the good news, is that most of the harm that we do to each other is not done by people in that horrible percentage. It's not done by people who are not in this room. Most of the harm we do is done by the rest of us. And we do it to each other every day, right? The reason that's both sad and makes me happy, it's sad because there's a lot more of us than there is of them, but the amount of harm that we can do is so large. The reason it makes me happy is just knowing about it. Because we don't have the intent to do the harm, just knowing about it helps us stop doing it. Because there's already the intent to change, right? So you could be in a backyard barbecue, someone's pit bull can come up and clamp on your leg, not to malign pit bulls, wonderful breed. They like scritches just as much as every other puppy, right? Or someone's goofy lab could be chasing a frisbee and could like take you out. Either way, your leg is broken, right? It doesn't matter if the intent to harm is not there, the harm still exists, right? So we're gonna find out about some of these harms that we do and some really small changes we can change to make our teams feel more inclusive. This results in better retention, which results in better advancement, which gives you umbrella coverage for all the other underrepresented minorities in your team. Now, one other thing we have to talk about is privilege. Now, anytime I say that word, some people, all the white dudes in the room are like, here we go. Here we go, privilege. All right, let's hear it. Come on, we're running the world, let's hear it. Privilege is not what a lot of people think it is. Like each of us, there are certain categories that can be used to describe us, but not define us. Like for me, for race, I don't know if you all noticed, I'm black, right? There's in each of these categories, in different contexts, there is a preferred category. In the United States, in most contexts, it's better to be white. In the US, better to be male. There's socioeconomic privilege. I work in tech. I'm doing very well off relative to most of the people in this country. May not feel that way, but I am. It's better to be educationally privileged, right? At different companies, there's even job ladder privilege. At Google, it's great to be an engineer. At Amazon, MBAs run the show. And at Apple, designers run the roost, right? There's level privilege. I'm a director at Google, which means I can create weeks of work for some poor team just by being in a meeting and going, well, that doesn't sound right. Scurry, 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 right? And so when you have privilege, you have two responsibilities. One responsibility is to lend privilege, right? When you can. The other responsibility is to have defense against fragility. So I'm going to get into one of these little examples right now. Sorry, I just have to clear my voice because there's a thing, actually I learned this from Jared's friend, it's called up-octaving. It's where black men, particularly who work in tech, make their voices higher to sound less threatening. So I was born in Nigeria. I'm a very large man. Joshua Opeta is the only man who tried out for the NFL Combine this year who can lift more weight than me. It is easier to win the strength competition on every NFL football team than to win at Google. Because to win at Google, you must beat me, and you are not beating me. Okay? If I get angry and start to talk, you are going to listen. But I don't talk like that. I talk like this. Right? See that's the thing called command presence. It's a weird thing. It's a privilege. You can use it, right? In certain contexts, right? But if I'm driving my car and I get pulled over, which happens to me a lot, and someone who looks like me tries to use some of that old command presence, hey, officer, what did he do? Now we both getting shot, right? Okay? Doesn't work. On the other hand, if a small white woman pulls over and says, officer, what did he do? Ma'am, get back in your car. No, you're on Twitch right now. Right? She can lend her privilege. It's always easier for us to help people from a different category than it is for us to speak for ourselves. So one example, something I'll talk about that happens at Google, is if you are born in the Midwest, let's say you're a white male, you're born in the Midwest, people assume you're conservative. If you're conservative, people assume you're Republican. If you're Republican, you voted for Trump. And if you voted for Trump, you are racist, you are sexist, you are transphobic. And people are like, all I said was I was born in Cleveland. Like, how did we get there from here, right? Now, I can make that point. I just made that point, right? Any volunteers for white men who would like to try and make that same point? It's much harder, right? I can lend my privilege in that situation. I can also use my privilege to, we're here in Atlanta. Who's familiar with Clark Atlanta University? Okay. I can go to the head of the CS department of Clark Atlanta University, and I can say, you're failing your students. And they would say, excuse me? I'd say, you're failing your students. Your students are brilliant, and they are not passing the Google interview. They're not passing the Facebook interview. They're not passing the Apple interview. They're not passing the Netflix interview. You are not preparing them properly. You need to change your curriculum, right? I can use my privilege sliders, black, male, engineering director, command presence, to stand in the middle of an HBCU and ask them to change their curriculum. It's much harder if I was a white male Google engineering director trying to do the same thing, right? Lending privilege. So how can we lend privilege, okay? There are fewer women in the tech industry. There are fewer black people in the tech industry. And there are only 3 reasons why. Lower performance reviews for the same exact work, slower rates of promotion for the same exact work, and microaggressions. Those are the 3 biggest reasons. So what if we correct for those 3 reasons? What if we get fair performance reviews? What if we get same rates of promotion? What if we eliminate the microaggressions? Our theory of change is that we would start to see numbers float in the right direction. And that's what we've done. So just giving one example here. By show of hands, who here reviews code as part of their job function? Okay? If you review a piece of code and the author of that code has a woman's name on it, you will leave more comments on that code than if a man had written it. I don't think that's true. Yes, it's true. It's true everywhere it's been tested. So true that there are Google engineers, women who invented particular pieces of software that are open source, that have fake dudes' names for landing tricky CLs on their own projects. And some of the names are hilarious, like Joe Doodson is the funniest one I've heard. Right? Now, here's the crazy thing. This isn't men who do this to women. This is all of us who do this to women. Women do this to women too, right? Now, here's the thing. This is a harm that's done by those of us that are not in this terrible percentage. This is all of us doing this. Now, I've just played a mean trick on all of you because I just inoculated you against this particular thing. Here's what we do. So Jeff Dean is the superstar engineer at Google. We just ask ourselves one question. If Jeff Dean had written this same piece of code, would I still leave this comment? And if the answer is, yeah, get it together, Jeff, then leave the comment. If the answer is no, then don't leave the comment. It's that simple, right? So and the mean trick I just played on you is if when you go back to your companies and use whatever tool you want to check number of review comments left on pull requests, you'll see that what I said is correct. But here's the crazy thing. If you run that same test on the people who are in this room 3 months from now, you will see that delta dissipate. Because none of us wants it to be true, that it's harder to land a tricky piece of code if you are underrepresented. There's a delta between the culture that we want for our teams and the culture as experienced by underrepresented people. So let's talk about culture just for a second here. Each of your teams has a specific culture. Now, the culture of your team is nothing more than the set of behaviors that are rewarded and punished. That's it, right? How does your team, I mean, these aren't good or bad things, it's just the culture of your team. The set of behaviors that are rewarded or punished. It's not what your CEO says, it's not your mission statement, that's all culture is, right? So if you think about, let's take, hypothetically, a giant company that, shows a lot of ads, right? How do you think about technical complexity versus revenue impact? Engineer A, I did this really complicated thing, used natural language processing, we rewrite the text that the advertiser wanted and we displayed it in a different way, and yeah, it's great, it's awesome. Make any money? No, didn't work, but it was very interesting. I wrote many papers and presented it at various prestigious conferences. Versus another engineer, when you search for a word like Coca-Cola, if we have an ad with the word Coca-Cola, I took that word and I bolded it in the ad, $2 billion incremental. How do you think about rewarding those two things, right? You think about for the culture of your team, just getting stuff done, but trampling everyone on the way there versus working collaboratively with people. How do you think about avoiding like late night heroics and answering pages versus designing systems that don't catch fire in the first place, right? All of these things define the culture for our team. And all of these things, we all want the culture of our team to feel inclusive. But if we are not aware of some of these things, we don't know that our team is experienced differently by people from underrepresented backgrounds. So for example, in a meeting, if a woman is interrupted, that is a trap. She has a couple of choices, they're all bad. Choice number one, I'm gonna speak up and interrupt back. And then all of a sudden it's like, damn, what's wrong with Karen? In a meeting where men and women speak equal time, women perceive that they spoke equal time. Men, when asked, perceive that women spoke 80% of the time. This has been tested in a bunch of different places. So here's something you should do is any of you all that are managers, or even if you're not a manager, just next time you're in a meeting, just keep count of how many men, how many women in the room. Stopwatch. Every time a woman starts speaking, start. Every time a woman stops speaking, stop. And just see what the ratio is. Well, Mekka, what should it be? I don't know. I don't know your team. I don't know the context. I don't know the personalities. I just want you to be aware of that. Now, here's where I can lend privilege. Right? When I see a woman on my team interrupted, I can either say, but everyone, what Karen was trying to say is, don't do that. It's really simple. You can just say, wait, hold on. Karen, were you finished? That's it. That's all you have to do. Wait, isn't that what Karen was saying? Well, it's similar. Was it similar or is it exactly the same? Well, help me understand the difference. That's what she said. Right? These things, you're like, oh, come on. Get to the real stuff. Like, how did you really do this? Like this, are there binders full of women somewhere? Like how are you really doing this? I'm telling you, this is it. These small differences. So I don't know if you remember, there was a very unfortunate event. There was a shooting at YouTube, and it was a very scary time for Googlers. And one of the things that the company did was got increased police presence at YouTube headquarters so that people could feel more safe. Now, I've been to some of the roughest neighborhoods in this country, right? And I've been to some of the roughest neighborhoods in this world, right? I don't know if any of y'all have been to Port Harcourt or Enugu, Nigeria, but there's some bad boys and bad girls too, right? I've been in military war zones. I've been downrange, which is a fancy way of saying people were shooting at me, right? Most of the time in my life, when I've had a loaded gun pointed at my head, it has been in Northern California, and the gun has been held by a police officer, right? So when you think about, hey, let's make people feel safer by increasing the police presence at YouTube headquarters, that is experienced very differently by Black employees than by white employees. Does this make you bad for wanting police there after there's been a shooting? No, it doesn't make you bad, right? But this is something to be aware of. This is a sharp example of how the same experience can be experienced very differently by people on your teams. So I do a lot of criminal justice reform work as well that we can speak to afterwards, but I see a lot of similarities between some of these things, even going to why I'm pulled over so much, right? Is it individual racism? No, it's not. It's a systemic form of racism. It is this. A lot of police officers are told, you must write 200 tickets a month or you do not get a good performance review. Now, a police officer might write 240 tickets and be like, I did it. And then their boss is like, yep, you only wrote 160. What do you mean? I wrote 240. Yeah, but you gave a bunch of tickets to software engineers and UX researchers. Those tickets don't stick, right? They'll spend more than $100 a month on coffee. But you give them a $100 ticket, they're like, I'm fighting it. It's the principle of the thing, right? Those tickets don't stick. Now, not all poor people are Black, but in this country, most Black people are poor. So if you give a ticket to a poor Black person, that ticket sticks. And that person can't afford to take off work, but what they really can't afford is to go to that. They can't afford the ticket, but what they really can't afford is to take off work. And they want no part of that courthouse at all. So systemically, the police are incentivized to pull over Black people and give Black people more tickets. And police officers sometimes grab my wrist through the window of the car. And I say, is there a reason you're grabbing my arm? And a police officer said, did you pull your arm away? I said, no. And I talked to law enforcement officers about this. And they say, that was very smart. What he wanted you to do was to pull your arm away so he could use that as justification to punch you and pull you out of the car. Why would he want to do that? Because then he can search your car. And if he finds drugs, it's 2 tickets, right? Police are incentivized to escalate. Now, if you look at this individually, you think, hey, police officers are racist. If you look at it and you focus on the 2% of people that are terrible, you say, no, I saw this cop. He was clearly racist, right? But if you look at the larger issue, you realize, yes, there's terrible people, and we need to have systems for that. But you know what? Eliminate quota-based policing. That has a bigger impact on reducing use of force incidences, reducing the number of Black people pulled over, than any kind of sensitivity training or anything that you do over here, right? So when you understand some of these systemic causes and you address some of them, we have a bigger impact. Making meetings a place where it is not more difficult to be Black, it is not more difficult to be a woman, it is not more difficult to be trans or to have a physical disability makes things a lot better. The other thing that's really important is making it okay to ask questions about some of this. I don't know if any of y'all who follow me on Twitter saw the thread I had recently about the Stanford class. Are y'all familiar with this? Yeah. I'm just going to share is anyone not familiar with it? Okay. So I had a Google engineer who said, okay, Mekka, you say it's safe to ask all these questions. And I get a couple, the time I've been doing this, I have not gotten any bad questions. 2 great questions I got. One was, I've been at Google for 8 years. I interview people a lot. Mekka, you tell me that talent is everywhere and opportunity is not. And that's the problem we have to solve. But in all the time I've been doing interviews, I have never once interviewed a Howard University student who has passed my interview. And Stanford kids pass my interview all the time. So can you explain that? And I let them know. I said, okay, great question. Are you aware that Stanford literally has a class in their course catalog, how to pass the Google interview? Really? Yeah, it's right there. Where's the course catalog? And what I started doing was I downloaded the syllabus for this class, and I took it to Howard University, and I gave it to the Howard students. And I asked them 3 guesses what started happening. More Howard students? Yes, to the extent that in the 2 years after we started doing that, more Howard students passed the Google interview than had in the entire history of the company up until that point, right? So when you understand, and so this engineer who asked this question, he now volunteers. He is now one of the mock interviewers. He was so changed just by understanding some of these things that we can do to make things a little bit more inclusive, right? Another example is, show of hands, who's familiar with Patty Jenkins? Okay. Yes, correct. Excellent. Patty Jenkins is the woman who directed Wonder Woman. Now, at the time that she got that gig, a bunch of articles came out saying, this is a mistake. She is not qualified. They should have given it to Jerry Bruckheimer or Zack Snyder or someone, who's experienced with, CGI and making stuff blow up, right? By their twisted logic, there is no woman in the world qualified to direct Wonder Woman, right? Now, at the time that Zack Snyder got his first movie and Bruckheimer got his first movie, similar articles didn't come out saying that they were underqualified. We tend to give men stretch opportunities. We tend to give women lateral opportunities, right? What's the solve for this? I ask VPs at Google and at other companies, make a list of all the stretch opportunities that you've made for people in your organization over the past year. Every single one, okay? Now, write down the gender of the person, write down the person's country of origin, ethnic background, take a look at it. What should the numbers be? I don't know. I don't know the context. I don't know the individuals, but I want you to be aware of it for your team, right? These things make a huge difference. Another good question that I've gotten is, okay, if we're building products, I understand why it's good to have PMs that are men and PMs that are women, and the world's a big place, black product managers, that makes sense. But I mean, we're doing infrastructure here, data structures and algorithms. What are they, black algorithms? Like, I don't get it, right? And it's a fair question. But think of it this way. Who knows who Stephen Hawking is? Physicist. He had ALS. ALS does not make you a better physicist. It doesn't. But if there's 2 labs, one where you have to be able-bodied just to be able to contribute, and another where physicians or physicists of all backgrounds can contribute, this lab gets better science done, right? So if you picture the top computer scientists in the world, about half of them are women. Gender is non-binary, but that's how it works, right? Today, we're only getting the contribution of less than 10 of those women, of the top 100, right? Should be 50 and 50. We're getting less than 10. And of black women, we're getting less than 1. What a waste, right? That's why inclusion is important. Now, one other thing last thing I kind of want to touch on and then see if we got some time for questions. How much more time do we have? Okay, perfect. Is something I call the critical moment, right? You observe something that is outside the culture that you want for your team, right? The example that I like to share is I was in a meeting and Google made a mistake and we needed to send an email to 2 billion of our closest friends. And someone said, yeah, we have to send this quickly, but it has to be good. It has to look like Google sent it, not like Nigerians sent it. Yeah, that was the sound. And a lot of people went like this. So in a moment like this, someone's perception of your team cannot stay the same. It will either go up or it will go down. What do I mean by that? People say, oh, I love Amazon. They never make a mistake. They're awesome. They're perfect. They're flawless. They never mess anything up. It's always perfect. And when they make a mistake, they fix it right away. I'm like, wait. Which is it? Is it they never make a mistake? Or is it when they make a mistake, they have great customer service? Because they're two different things. If you go to a restaurant and you order some chicken and it is terribly undercooked, it's bad, and the maitre d' notices it, and they're like, ooh, they shouldn't eat that. They're going to get salmonella. You know what? I'm going to send them a gift card next week. No. The moment has passed, right? The moment to act is right there, right? If, on the other hand, if they said, oh my gosh, please, sir, don't eat that. You know what? Do you like duck? The duck is the house specialty. Bring the duck. We're not going to charge you for the chicken or the duck. Sir, please, compliments of the house. Now I'm like, ooh, I like this. That's how I'm supposed to be treated. That's right. You know? My impression of the place has actually gone up to the point where at Amazon, if a customer has a bad thing that happens with their orders in the first 3 months, and Amazon fixes it very well, their perception of the company goes up. I was like, wow, it's pretty cool. You know what? He wants to mess up some more stuff? Like, no. But you can use this as an opportunity. One thing that doesn't work, I want to talk about some of the things that don't work. So waiting to be like, oh, I'm going to talk to them after the meeting and say, Mekka, that was really messed up. They shouldn't have said that about Nigerians. Like, waiting until after the meeting doesn't work, right? Doing the other thing, being like, check Hughes, right? Calling someone racist is the biggest waste of time. If someone actually is racist and you call them racist, they're like, so? Like, Mekka, you're a big dude. Facts, right? I don't care, right? If someone is not racist, even if someone is racist, but they don't believe that they're racist, calling them racist, you've just attacked their identity of self. Now they must defend it. And you're going to spend the next 3 hours hearing about who they dated in college, how many times they voted for Obama, and what their favorite Kendrick Lamar song is. Like, you will never get back to the original issue, right? There'll probably be tears involved, right? So that's not productive. So what's the best way to do it? Is to give feedback in the moment and give feedback with kindness. Just to say, you know, I don't think that sounded how you meant it to sound, right? Now you're using that person's notion of identity to your advantage. If they're in that 1 or 2%, they're going to be like, no, I meant it. Man, Nigerians, they always emailing me, right? If they're not in that percentage, they're going to say, you're right, that's not how I meant that to sound, right? You're right, I didn't mean that to be offensive. Who here, by show of hands, who here really thinks the person who made that comment is racist? Who here thinks they have some secret thing against Nigerians? So just to let you know what I did say, I waited to see if anyone else was going to act, and no one else acted. And that's something that can be extremely harmful, because when a microaggression happens, if the team handles it, it's kind of cauterized, and it's this one thing that one person did. If you don't handle it, it expands to, there's that tech bro culture I heard so much about, to, man, this company sucks, to, man, this whole industry, let me control, alt, delete the whole thing, right? Like, but by handling it in the moment, it's much better. One other thing that's great about handling it in the moment is you show people, other people, that, hey, my team handled this situation. You show the person who made the mistake that if I say something that is outside the culture of the team, I'm not going to be labeled racist or transphobic or sexist or any of these things. My team is going to give me feedback with kindness. Like, my code is perfect. I don't know about y'all. Y'all write bugs and stuff, right? For those of y'all that write bugs, it's very gratifying knowing that if I write something bad, code review will catch it. If code review doesn't, QA or Eng-Prod will catch it. If they don't, we have monitoring, right? It's very, very gratifying knowing that our engineering culture will handle these things. Last thing, and then I know we're getting close on time. I want to go back to one thing I forgot to cover earlier, something called defense against fragility. Whenever you have privilege, it's extremely important. If I walk past a homeless person in San Francisco, and that person tells me, you know what, you tech people are ruining the city, I hate you, You're the reason I'm homeless, this, that, and the other. Now, if I go, hold on, everyone, I'm going to debate this guy. You're all thinking, oh my God, dude, I'm oblivious to my privilege, right? Now, we all have a built-in ability to show defense against fragility. So sometimes when I say, yeah, my team is 40% women, so yes, ma'am, question, where's the other 10%? What do you want, a cookie? I got no cookies today, right? She's not wrong, right? Now, if I go, you're only hurting your allies, go home, that makes no sense. Whenever we release a new product, the press will say 10 things about it, 8 of which are just false, 1 of which is intentionally false to get clicks, and 1 of which will go, you know what? We should totally fix that, right? We don't cry about the other stuff and say, I'm not going to make a browser anymore, right? We just get to work fixing the one thing. We're showing defense against fragility. It's the same exact thing in other contexts. Anyway, I'm out of time. I'm happy to talk to anyone about this because I think this is such an important topic for us to do, and I'm really comfortable to answer questions. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can shoot me a note. But I think it's really important that as an industry we get this right. So, thank you. Huh? How many more minutes? Oh, I got time for questions. Oh, yeah, I got time for questions. I just wanted 2 rounds of applause. I totally did that on purpose. Okay, questions. Are there any questions on any of the stuff that we covered? Again, I've been doing this for a while. I've never gotten a bad question. Yes, there's a question in the back. Is Mekka Okereke, I think it's my first and last name? Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, right here, ma'am.
How have you been able to get your thought, and how you've been able to do your team, how you've been able to impact the rest of your organization or the rest of your larger team?
Are you talking about impact from the inclusion standpoint or from the product standpoint? Yeah, so I do this talk, and also I make sure that performance reviews for women and for underrepresented minorities on my team are fair, and I explain some of these techniques. What I mean by that is it's really easy you can just build a histogram of all the words used in performance review to describe men's work and women's work. And I've noticed a difference between the words used to describe men and the words used to describe women. Except for certain subsets of women, their work is described as if they're men. And they tend to correlate with the top performers, right? So I show this to my peers and I call them out on different things. So I have a tech lead on my team who every performance review cycle, someone comes up to me and says, yeah, she wasn't very helpful. Really? Why? Well, we wanted to do this thing and she wouldn't let us. Okay, the thing you wanted to do was objectively bad. Like, let's start there. Okay, I think you meant she didn't agree with you. No, that's not what I meant. Okay, help me understand. How could she have disagreed with you and been helpful? Use the words for me. Yeah, right? So that kind of echoes out. And then the other thing, there's a thing called bib stealing. Who's familiar with that term? Okay. Sometimes people, when there's a race, Atlanta Marathon, some people go to Photoshop, they print out a fake thing, they put it in, they just go run in the race. And it's a cool prank until someone who actually trained for the race can't get to run. And so a lot of times men describe their work that they worked on with a woman a little bit more. They don't really realize they're putting their hand in someone else's forehead to kind of push them back. So this is one that I'm kind of known for in my org. Someone was going to go on stage at an all hands and present a woman's work as if it was his own. And the woman wasn't on my team, she was on a different team, but she had worked on this project with our team. And a bunch of people panicked. They were like, Mekka's gonna go crazy, this isn't gonna happen. So I had to tell them, I was like, well, we need to undo this, we need to unwind this. And they're like, well, it's too late now, the slides have already gone out, it'll be really awkward. I'm like, what'll be really awkward? Is when you see me get up on stage and stand in the middle and say, this ain't gonna continue till we get it right. So you choose, right? Again, I'm lending some of my privilege there to let people know that it's not just for people in my team, it's org-wide. This is the culture that we want to have. We're not going to have a culture where women's work is described differently. We're not going to have a culture where women have to do the double thing of doing good work and then have to do the gymnastics to make sure they get credit for their work. Yes, I have. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Making sure that the interview processes are inclusive at Google.
Haha, that's a good one. I had a long thread on this. We're working on it a lot. One thing is that making sure that the interview prep materials are widely available. And then, did anyone see the thing on cognitive load that I said? Okay, who here has seen the thing on cognitive load? Okay, so real quick thing, we're gonna do this, okay. I'm gonna tell you to add two numbers together. Don't shout it out yet, just do it in your head. 16 plus 19. Okay, shout it out, what is it? Okay. 36 plus 48. Keep it in your head, 36 plus 48. Okay? Shout it out, 36 plus 48. 84, okay. So like we can add, kinda, okay? Now I want you to do this with me. Everyone click your fingers one time. Okay, click your fingers 2 times. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here's the pattern I want you to do. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. 2, 3, 2, 1. Okay, everyone do that and kind of keep it going. 1, 2. Keep that going. 57 plus 94. What? Why'd you stop? Right? We're not doing difficult things. We're just trying to, we're not trying to design systems. We're not doing data structures and algorithms. We're just trying to take 2 integers and add them together. And it's hard. It's hard because the cognitive load of doing that while clicking your fingers is too high. Now, clicking your fingers is easier than walking. Walking, you have to balance, you have to swing forward, you have to do this. If you turn your head, the balance changes. But if you were walking and I asked you to do that, it would be just as easy because you've been walking your whole life and you've driven the cognitive load down. A lot of times when people go to technical interviews, they go, oh man, I don't know what happened. I messed it up. The minute I walked out of there, I was like, oh, it was so easy. I emailed the recruiter. Oh, it's too late. I messed it up. And the reason that happens is if you don't practice on a whiteboard, that is increasing the cognitive load of you trying to perform in front of some Google engineers watching you do your business, right? So 2 things. One, I tell people the magic number is this. And the whole time I've been doing this, I've only ever had one person who did this and didn't pass. 40 is the magic number. 40 standing up practice questions with a whiteboard on the wall. 40. No one in the past 15 years I've been doing this has done that and not passed either their Amazon or Google interview. The reason is not that you're actually getting better. The 40 isn't the practicing. You're just driving the cognitive load of whiteboard writing to 0. Some people are like, well, I never did 40 questions and I passed. Were you ever teaching? Yeah, I was a teacher. Yeah. Right? So the question I would ask is, why the hell are we even doing this? Why is this part of our interview process in the first place? This is not correlated with being a good software engineer. So there's 2 things. There's one, sharing the information that doing this silly standing up actually helps you pass. This is, the Stanford kids get told this, right? But then there's 2, which is how do we change the whole interview process to actually more closely correlate to what it really means to be a productive, effective software engineer, right? If a senior software engineer at Amazon wants to work at Netflix and she has to take a month of her life to study, to do stuff that is not her job, to convince someone to let her work there, we're all doing this a little bit wrong. So we're pushing on a number of different things to try and change it. But that gatekeeping, anytime there's a gatekeeping thing, we kind of go towards our gut, and all of our guts are biased, including my own. And so that's just something that we need to fix. I think I'm out of time. Thank you so much for the time, and I'm happy to answer any more questions that anyone has. I'll see you all for the rest of the next couple of days. Thank you.